With the quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:30 p.m. This is a regular meeting for the month of November, with the agenda was posted more than 24 hours in advance of the meeting as required. I'd like to introduce myself, Darlene Mann, and the Budget Committee members present for tonight's meeting, which are Tom Whalen, Brian Rader, Cindy Van Conant, Raul Blanchet, Matt McGuire, and Tony Stanizzi. And I'd like to thank Kelly Seeley for attending. She's our District Business Administrator. And also like to mention that Dave Blinn has an excused absence for this evening. If you could all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd like to ask if there are any agenda adjustments for this evening. I'll probably add just a brief discussion around some of the information that I distributed with the agenda. Some of it was relevant to tonight's discussion. Some of it is relevant for a future meeting, but based on the time frame with which it's available, I wanted to make sure everybody had it as soon as possible. So maybe might just add a section for additional information or something like that after the as we're going through the budget discussion. I'd like to appoint Raul tonight as our meeting observer, and we're going to skip the approval of minutes. We seem to have a little hiccup with them. I realized shortly before this meeting, usually everybody receives a draft copy, and I just thought they had gone out and wanted to review them again and realized we didn't have them. So I've asked Dawn, she just sent them to me, and I will get those out to everybody. There just seemed to be a hiccup with they were provided earlier this month, but we just didn't receive them. So we'll have those with the November minutes to review and approve for the December meeting. Seeing no public, we can move through public input and move on to the general business section of our agenda, where we're starting with the FY23 budget discussion. Kelly provided a round 3 view of the budget, which was the Excel file that I shared with everyone. So Kelly, if you want to walk us through the updates to that file, I'll give the brief overview is that the current view falls below the guidance that we set based on the changes that were made, and I'll let Kelly lead us through what those changes were.
Well, I made a lot of changes to the account lines based on just cleaning up the information that was provided the first time. Mm-hmm. And that did result in a reduction in special ed and NHRS, which I'm sure Darlene will explain what the effects are. Mm-hmm. And then the only other changes are just a few to the new item spreadsheet. I have to remind myself what they are. Okay, we had to add an ESOL teacher, which is the English language as a second language. There's new requirements from the state that are forcing us to hire additional personnel to meet those requirements this year and in the following year. So, and we're sharing that with Hollis. We don't need to. Brookline will be all set. We can shift our shared employee around to meet their needs, but we will have to address Hollis and Brookline. Hollis and Co-op.
Can I just ask about that? So we don't have an ESOL staff or been able to meet the needs so far through contracted services, or?
We have shared employees. There's no one district that has a 1.0, mm-hmm. So that I think there's 2 of them. There's 2 of them. And those 2 people have gone through the district to meet all of our needs up until these new requirements. Mm-hmm. And now we're being forced to add. I mean, we could do contracted services, I suppose, but that's inevitably usually
definitely more expensive. Yeah. I just, we don't, it's not a population of students that we spend a lot of time on.
Right.
But I believe, do you know what the expanded requirements are? Are they requiring?
Yeah, there's like more, they have to, instead of just a partial period or something, they have to have like one whole period, each student per
Right,
day.
I think it's like depending on their needs, they have to
Yes.
have additional service
Additional
hours.
time, yeah, spent towards their education, and
So-
it was
so
just
this
kind
is
of.
one- So this is one staff per student?
No, there's 2 staff members that service all 3
All the
districts for all the
All- for
students
all
that
the
we
districts.
have.
Right. And
Yeah.
how many do we have now?
Oh, I don't know.
You mean students?
Yeah, but then-
I don't know how many students there are. I didn't get that information, but it's more about the time that the state is now requiring per student as opposed to the number of students.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of dropped out of the sky on us this year with really no warning. So we're scrambling to try to figure out how to deal with that this year. And then we know we have to provide for that next year in the budget. So that's a late addition. And then I think the next addition is the access points in the middle school. I've added under replacement computer equipment. Those are really approaching end of life and need to be changed next year if at all possible. I feel like there's one more. Oh, under the facilities heading, I believe that's where that is. Yeah, the facilities maintenance heading. We've swapped the student dirt lot, excuse me, surface prep to the turf field parking and lighting. And the student dirt lot, as you can see from round 2, was 50,000. So we've moved that up there and added another 40,000 to really tackle the lighting, and that's a bigger project than the student dirt lot. So that's still an estimate. We're still waiting for better numbers for that particular item, but that is an addition, or I guess a swap and an addition.
Okay, so those changes.
And those are the only things that we've added to round 3 new items.
Okay, so those were about $108,000 worth of
Well,
new items.
There's 50,000 for the ESOL.
Right. And then the other 40 is predominantly the change in paving.
Oh, I
and
see
then
what you're
the
saying.
access
Okay,
points.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But as a result of, like you said, a lot of the cleanup in the other lines,
Yes.
we're able to kind of balance those increases and still, I don't want to say exceed, you're not exceeding, you're coming in below
The original, yeah.
our original preliminary guidance.
Yes.
So,
We did
Can you
do
then
that.
summarize what the numbers are now based on?
yep, so, the current budget, just pick the best view. Okay, so the current operating budget total is, being requested is $25,268,502 versus the 345,525. So it's coming in about 77,000 below. Let me give you the actual number. Yep, 77,000 below guidance. And, but as Kelly mentioned, so we do preliminary, okay, before I go there. So they're at that, that 25,268 number would be a 3.61% increase in the operating budget. And the warrant articles we currently have placeholders for are the HESA contract, 200,000 for the maintenance trust, 25,000 for the special education trust, a placeholder for the SAU budget of $1,073,740. And we are waiting on possible warrant articles for, as a result of the energy and enrollment studies, and it looks like an air conditioning project for the high school. So as we stand right now, the operating budget is 3.61% greater than the current budget, and the total warrant of 26,655,765 is 3.85% above the existing budget. So we don't have any tax impacts of what that would mean, or distributions between, Hollis and Brookline. The tax rates were just set, and the apportionment information just made available, and we're still waiting on revenue estimates and things, and those are the key things that drive what the resulting tax rates are. So we'll get to those impacts hopefully in December, but where we stand right now is 3.61% on the operating budget and 3.85% in total. So I added a spreadsheet. I added a tab called Final Guidance. And I think this is kind of what Kelly was alluding to. When we put preliminary guidance together, it's based on the distribution of how some items fall within the current budget, what we kind of our puts and takes. And as a result of cleaning up those items, we could review some of those lines and reissue guidance. And if we kept the same format to what we put forward, the guidance number would be reduced to $25,124,813. But if you remember from last month's meeting, we did kind of adjust the multiplier based on kind of the fact that our guidance number was falling above, the district's budget was already below our guidance number. So we pushed a little bit harder, and knowing that there was some work to be done, and adjusted that factor. So if we were to put the factor back to where kind of we thought it was going to be, I would say that this would be times 2. The difference between the two views would be another reduction of $56,000, essentially, if we were to push the view and want to adjust our preliminary guidance number. So we can have a discussion about that. We can have a discussion about any of the budget items or any of the line items, any of the categories of expenses. If anyone feels the percentages or the changes are significant or want further explanation, I invite any of you to ask those questions and address whatever items you need more information on. I will point out that some of the areas of significant improvement, or actually surprising improvement, I would say, are health insurance, which is actually below the FY22 budget, which I'm not sure we've ever had a reduction in health insurance benefits, especially given the fact that we have a rate increase. So clearly there was some redistribution of the
Census?
The census and the, I just need a word, not the program, whether they're choosing a single family or two-person plan,
right.
the plan distribution.
Right.
It's been a long day. So taking that census and moving it forward results in some savings, even though we have a slight increase in the rates. Similarly, looking at NHRS, we see some improvements there on the support staff side. Again, we have a significantly larger than the current budget retirement benefit, because in the current budget we don't have a plan for any retirees. And I think where are we on the maximum? Are we at the maximum, one below?
I think there's one left
One
that we
left.
could have.
So we have
yes.
8, 7?
I think it's
what the
8.
max is.
How many we have right now?
I think we have 7 right now.
7 right
yeah,
now,
I
8
think
is the
there's
maximum.
8, yeah.
So we see a significant increase in that section, and that's what's leading the increase in benefits. Right, there are some savings, so when we're looking through the budget, all the items in the new item spreadsheet, a couple of them, like replacement computers and things like that, get distributed throughout the budget, but generally, anything in there that's a new addition is staying in the new addition section. So when you look at areas like building and grounds and things like that, and you see some areas of savings, it's because nothing is budgeted because it's in the new items category. So that's why it looks like there's some savings in building and grounds. Let me just open professional development. So we think with professional development, it's going to kind of stay on track, which is higher than it was in FY21 because our staff clearly wasn't doing much professional development during COVID. And I think one other area, okay, so one area where we do see some significant increase is for special education out-of-district tuition. So those are case-sensitive and student-driven costs that, we do see, we do have years where we see significant reductions, and then we see years where we see significant increases, again, just due to the population of students, how they shift from the lower schools up to the co-op, and this is a year where we're going to see some increases due to that. Surprisingly, transportation is a reduction, which I don't think I would have been led by a reduction in special education transportation because we're going into the 3rd year of the contract, or no, it's a new contract.
It's a new contract, yes.
It's a new contract for transportation. Was that approved by the governing board? Okay.
So we don't have to worry about price increases in fuel.
We pay that separately.
Yeah,
Huh?
we pay that ourselves.
So that's separate?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So Kelly, just to get an understanding of, we could talk about the CIP a little bit, but the energy study and the AC project, is there a little bit of an overview you can give us on where we stand with those, or especially the AC project, because that's not something we've heard of?
No, and that's really coming from the teachers have requested some sort of cooling in the building, whether it be the 3rd floor, the whole building. They have felt that it's been very, very warm in the past couple of years. So, go ahead, you have a question.
So is part of the energy study going to evaluate like the use of air heat pumps or a dehumidification system?
Yeah, those are all considerations, but I don't think, in their minds, it's more urgent than what we're working on. So we wanted to just put a warrant article out there for the voters to weigh in on whether they feel like it's as urgent as some of the staff feels. And if it were to be voted down, then obviously that would be incorporated into the energy piece that we're working on.
Okay, so we don't have any sense for the magnitude of something like that?
Well, I did just today get information on that, and this is really super preliminary, so like I had to beg them to give me something. So if we did the entire building, and this is probably a low ball number, is about $3.7 million. And then if we were to just replace the 3rd floor, that's just like 1.1 million, the 3rd floor units for cooling. So those are the numbers that I just got hot off the presses, and obviously we need to look at that more, and the school board has yet to really discuss that as well.
Is this
this kind of staged then if you did $1 million project and another million,
It could be,
or would
because
it end up being
whatever-
more expensive by
yeah.
waiting to the end and?
Right, it could be just do this piece and then that would be subtracted from what we did if we did the energy, the whole energy picture. So it could be a piece, yes.
So do we have any idea of the magnitude of the energy?
No, not at all. We are way too early in that because it's energy and enrollment put together.
Mhm.
We've just recently seen some preliminary designs, and I think because it's so where we are in the timing of everything, it's unlikely in my mind that it will be a warrant article this year.
Mhm.
But, I don't know if the school board has had a chance to discuss that at all. Cindy, if you can add any more to that, so, yeah.
We
So-
haven't discussed it.
So does it work, can the warrant article be a sense of the district in terms of, not necessarily pose a question to say raise $5 million? It could be, would you be in favor of or opposed to, for example?
Well, I think
To
that.
get a sense from the public as to whether or not the plan.
I think
to-
that they are gonna want more information to be able to answer that question. I mean,
You're gonna want numbers,
Yeah, and
tax impact.
And that's why, I mean, if it isn't, something that the district can be like, I don't think it's worth necessarily putting something like to get a sense of the, well, I think the warrant article itself is the sense of the community. And if the
Right.
district puts up a good enough case, then
Yes.
it passes, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't.
right.
And I think if you do like a half measure like that, I think not giving enough information will then, it could potentially lead a legislative body down the road of, well, we don't have enough information, so we wouldn't be in
So
support of it.
It could be
So,
counterproductive, right?
yeah, so if you have everything and can move forward, great. Or if you have everything and say, oh, I need to wait a year because it's just not the right time, or we don't have all of the information,
Right.
then we wait the
I
year.
feel it would be very rushed right now, and the co-op is very sensitive as well to the fact that Brookline is likely going to put something to the voters as well. So
Right.
to put both of them at the same time would be really difficult.
Right, as an entire district, I know
Yes.
that the superintendent and the business office really do want to manage like that impact to taxpayers and realize that you do get, hit in more than one district per se because of the co-op and the two
Exactly.
elementary districts, so.
Just so I understand, this is for air conditioning.
Well, there's two things we're looking at.
Okay.
There's two holes in the budget right now for possible warrant articles, and one of them is the whole building air conditioning, and that's being more driven by the requests of the teachers, where the other one is more of a whole building view of energy and enrollment possibilities that are coming our way at some point,
And that's for both schools.
and that's for both schools, yes.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
what's the time frame on the result of those studies? December, January?
I believe in December, they'll have, the architects, will have a narrative available for the school board. I believe that's the goal here. And then we can look at it closer. But
Right.
I feel like we're in a sort of
Right.
going to be rushed
Yeah.
situation, so.
Mhm. And when is the December meeting of the school board?
The 8th.
The 8th, oh.
Yeah, we're early.
Oh, wow, you
That
guys
is
are really
early.
early.
That's because, everything gets shifted.
That's
because
right.
of the-
Okay, I could be wrong on that. then.
Might be January.
Yeah, it might be January.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless we discuss it at the governing board, which is the 16th.
Ah,
So, but
sure.
if we pulled our group out, we could
Right.
discuss it at
That's a
that if we needed
possibility.
to.
Okay.
That's true.
We've done that for other projects. I think one thing that's driving the AC stuff too is the airflow and COVID and the concern whether, the building is really filtrated correctly, which we've had multiple studies and it is, but I still think that that's in their minds when it's so thick on that third floor, especially once spring comes, it
Right.
just really
And the
feels
humidity,
stagnant.
yeah, the humidity is really brutal.
So is it that there's no air conditioning now, or that what's there isn't working well?
No, there's never
There's
been
nothing.
there. The auditorium has air conditioning and a couple other spaces do, but not in general, no.
Not in general.
Yeah.
I just see this as a whole issue of heating, air, flow, air conditioning, and not just an air conditioning issue.
Right.
And it
that's-
should be
yeah,
looked at in the context of what do we do for air quality?
Right.
And air quality certainly includes heating, air conditioning, filtration, circulation, and looking at it as just an air conditioning problem and putting whatever millions of dollars on it.
Right.
I think it takes it out of context of what it is that we would like to see
I agree.
happen.
I totally agree with you on that, yes.
Anyone have any questions for Kelly on the budget? By group tonight.
I was gonna bring a question maybe later.
Okay.
At the previous meeting, we asked you about the description of the, some of these new staffing requirements. And one of the files that you brought up, this is for the SAU staffing, so I wanna discuss that at some point.
Okay, we'll get to that when we
Okay.
talk about the SAU budget. That was a real, yeah, okay, we'll get to that. That was a
Sorry.
really good, that was a really good description, so, but we'll get to that. So with regard to guidance, at this point, I would have to say, at this point in the budget process, we've never had a view that's fallen below guidance this early on. So I don't know what it is about this cycle that's kind of breaking records here.
So I have a question. Should we still force him to look for more savings?
Well, that's kind of,
No.
that's kind of where we
Or
are.
should we
Trust
just stop
me.
right here?
I have scrubbed this so hard that there's nothing else left. The only thing left is this.
So, yeah, I will emphasize that from view to view, from the round 2 view to the round 3 view, is that right? There's a reduction of over $200,000. So there are, there was significant change and improvement view over view. And again, I don't think view over view, I think that's like a cumulative effect we've seen as we kind of go month to month
Yeah,
over,
yeah.
as we've done these cycles before.
Yes.
But I don't think in one fell swoop we've ever accomplished
Probably
that much
Probably not.
in like one scrubbing of the budget. That also included some additions for other items that are included on the new items, like
Yes.
the recalibration of some of the projects,
Yes.
the addition of the
Right.
staff and whatnot. So while there is still work to do, obviously, in reviewing, tax impacts and all of that go along with it, I personally feel that there have been significant improvements made in the view that we have, and I would support what we have right now, but I'm obviously open to the conversation. If anyone wants more or different data, we have, some of the supplemental information I asked and we review from Kelly are things that get incorporated in the March meeting, like when we talk about the census of staff, where they fall, like bachelors versus masters on the high end of the scale, distribution of benefits, things like that. And we gather that information along the way, and we'll continue to, look at that and request it. But at this point, I just am looking for some feedback on support for the view that we have now and stopping at round 3 and waiting and reviewing any additional articles that come up and kind of to see where everybody's sense of the budget is at this point.
I'm okay with it.
Nothing stands out as irregular to me, it just seems like a defensible budget.
I'm okay with it, but I would like to not take a final decision vote till at least the next month.
No, that's fine. That's
Well,
fine.
and there are a couple of possibilities for increases or decreases, depending, we're still waiting for, there's still time for teachers to retire, to announce that retirement. So
At
that
least
could,
give it a little extra time for any of
Yeah.
last minute changes.
right, and the SAU budget, we haven't finalized that yet, so
Right.
that could go up or down. Well, I don't think it'll go up, but
Yeah, another warrant articles.
yes.
So I will ask, before we move on to talking about the SAU budget, just we can start the conversation, is it one that has to continue? That has to be decided tonight. It's one that can continue as we go through. I would ask the committee to consider the contingency warrant article. It's something that we've had put in the budget, I would say, for a long time. We've probably
I've
had
been
it for
here.
5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
And last year was the first year that it was unsupported by the budget committee and supported by the school board, unsupported by the budget committee, and did not pass the town. And so we do not have a $100,000 contingency in the current budget. And I'd just like to have a discussion with how members feel about putting that contingency back in the budget.
Doesn't this co-op school have retained funds?
We do, but it's a very low percentage, so I would recommend if you're not doing the $100,000 to consider upping that percentage.
So what's the,
I think it's-
rather than a percentage, what's the amount?
It's 180,000
So
something.
if everyone could just hold on for a
Yeah.
minute, I
Yep.
can pull up a comparison document. Just give me 1 minute. We talked about it. We had it in the district meeting last
Yeah,
year.
you did. I remember that.
Let me just find it.
It's probably toward the end, the last warrant articles.
Here's the budget, SAU budget. Oh, that is that one. Okay, here we go. So the way the retained fund balance works is up until last year, districts were only allowed to maintain or retain 2.5% of the net assessment if a legislative body had voted and given their approval and permission to do that. So right now, Hollis School District and Brookline School District have 2.5% maximums available, and it doesn't guarantee that 2.5% gets put aside every year. It's a decision of the school board, but it's a maximum of 2.5%. The co-op has a 1% retained balance maximum. Last year, 2 years ago, the legislature changed the RSA, and the new maximum is 5%. But any district who approved 2.5%, if they wanted to increase, or any percentage, if they wanted to increase to the 5%, you have to put up another warrant article and put in that percentage. It wasn't like, well, you improved the max the last time, so it just automatically increases to 5%. That's not how it works. So every district, regardless of the fact that the RSA changed, every district kind of stays where they are unless you put up a warrant article that allows you to increase that percentage. So,
And once you do that, then you can get it funded.
yes, up to that amount. So it
Right.
doesn't ever have to be the maximum, it could be
Right.
anywhere like up to that number.
So,
So
Right,
to your
right.
question, which was, what is the amount the budget that the co-op has set aside? I think because of where our assessment laid out, we were able to max at, like you said, 181,000.
Yeah, I want to say it was that, yeah.
Prior to that, we had been pretty consistently around like 145 to 150. So it is dependent on a net assessment, so the number does change and it isn't
So that was
always
based on the
stagnant.
operating budget or based on the
It's off of the net
total budget? The
assessment.
net
It's off of the net assessment, which is based on the budget and revenue offset. So it gets kind of calculated every year. But we were usually around the $150,000 mark. We're up to 180, 181 now. The other funds that the co-op has are the Facilities Maintenance Trust, which, you know, goes ins and outs and is used for, oftentimes we put into it and then designate items that reduce it. So on the current budget, I think we have a total of, Maintenance Trust, our estimated starting balance was 99,000, and their recommending putting in 200,000 with this budget, but then 200,000 is gonna come out for projects, so we're at around 99, around, say, 100,000. In the facilities trust, and we have 200,000 in the special education trust, and I believe this current budget has another $25,000 recommended as an article. Last year, we did not, last district meeting for this current school year, we did not put up a warrant article to fund the special education trust. So we're getting back on track. We would, the recommendation is for 25,000, and we're working to get that trust up to about 250, which is, you know, the kind of cost of a student, if like an unanticipated types of services that would be needed.
And what did you say we are right now?
200.
200.
So compared to the numbers used in April's meeting that I have not updated for whatever the final fund balances, you know, and retainages were, Hollis and Brookline were in that, in total, looking at their retained fund balances, their maintenance funds, and Hollis School District also has an SAU maintenance fund, the facilities fund, and the special ed trust fund. Hollis total fund balance of all of those items on a almost $15 million budget had a, say, probably their fund balance is a little bit higher, so say 4.75% in various fund balances. Brookline on a $10 million budget had about 5%, and the co-op with a $25.8 million budget had about 2.5%. So overall, we're the district with the largest budget, and the lowest percentage of that budget that gets has any kind of retained fund balances of any kind. I would say we probably have the biggest schools and staffs as well among the schools. So what I could do is update this summary chart based on you know, the reality of maybe where the projected budgets are, where the kind of current fund balances are. We can kind of see where those percentages and dollar amounts shake out, if that helps everybody in this discussion. I would say that you know, the previous parameters on drawing the retained fund balance were always directed toward those kind of emergent situations, or a way to like reduce the tax rate and things like that. But
Is there any commentary about risk, exposure? You know, these are contingency funds for an indeterminate amount of risk, but is it more risky at the high school? I mean, do we have a higher risk of a higher impact at the high schools, or middle school level, than we do at the elementary school level, or things like the special ed?
right. Mm-hmm. I would have to, we could ask that to the staff, and I don't know if Kelly,
Yeah,
you're prepared to address
I
that.
don't think I can address that.
I mean, I don't want to assume that, but it seems as though services provided at that level are a little more expensive
I would
typically.
think so too, and, you know,
So that would justify a little more consideration from the.
Right, I mean, you do, you know, we don't budget extra in anticipation of like emergencies in the budget.
no.
What's being budgeted, especially for special education, is for anticipated needs of the population that we have.
How often has the co-op had to dip into the retained balance?
We have not. We actually did, at the
We did
very
once,
first
yeah.
year, there were 2 instances, this was when, before, well, you were here, but Eric was
Right,
the
right.
guy. We had a cracked water tank and another situation. It was a really long time
The
ago.
elevator?
No.
Oh, it might have been, it could have been the high school elevator,
Yeah.
but both things took place before the school year even started. So without knowing what was gonna happen in the year, we did go to the DOE and
Yeah.
request the utilizing some of the retained fund balance.
Okay, so that requires DOE approval.
Not anymore.
DOA,
At the
or-
time it did.
time it did,
Now
but not
it's a
now.
public hearing and school board approval.
Okay.
All right, for the contingency fund, I guess, what are the scenarios, I guess, for what's allowed for those types of funds? I mean, is there anything that's off the table that if there's money in there, it can only be used for a certain set of
No, I
expenses?
don't think anything is excluded, so it
No,
could be,
it becomes like a budget line item. So
Right.
if we were to, significantly overrun legal or, I don't know.
special ed could be used,
Okay.
Yeah.
facilities
So it
could be used, so.
It seems to me that if we didn't have some of the other trust funds, I would tend to increase that one. But given that we have those other categories,
Well, but keep in mind that special ed can only be
Used
used
for
for
special
special
ed.
I
ed.
understand. But the
That's
fact that we
your
have
biggest one.
several other categories of trust funds already,
Oh,
I
wait a
don't
minute.
necessarily
Let
am
me just,
driven
I
to
just
change
wanna-
that to 5%.
I just want to add something to what I said. I was looking at a view, assuming the co-op had the $100,000 contingency.
Oh,
Actually, I want to revise my statement. We're the district with the largest budget and the smallest percentage and dollar amount, because now if I take out that 100,000, we fall below the amounts that Hollis or Brookline, we would only be in the say $500,000 range. And the other districts are greater than that. So I just wanted to, but I'll put that together and we can all see it, so.
You know, I think part of the discussion too, I mean, I don't think it has to be 100, I mean, I think we could talk
Oh, no, yeah,
50
it could be
or, I mean,
50
so
or 70,
I
it could
think
be
that's
any,
part of the
yeah, it could be
discussion.
any amount. I tend to look at it as, while I understand that it's not something we've utilized and had to use for the size of the budget and the age of our buildings, and if you're just looking to be, from a financial planning perspective, to mitigate some risk, I feel like we need to consider some amount of money to go into the contingency. I think it's just, again, and if the thing, the contingency, if it is not used, it gets, put into the unreserved fund balance, returned to the taxpayer, and we always have to put up a warrant article to fund it. It isn't like another line item in the budget that just is, becomes part of the bottom line operating budget. It isn't something that we have to put forward every year to be able to fund that line, so.
And to me, it kind of, there's this in combination with the other warrant articles that are coming, and if there are larger warrant articles coming, then I'd be more hesitant to support a contingency fund. If there aren't big warrant articles
Okay.
coming, then I'd be more likely to support it.
All right.
It's
so
the
we'll kinda-
balancing.
It seems that there is a process in place, which is a process, but it sounds like it goes pretty quickly, and if you have all your documentation in place, I would think that if we had a boiler that went or whatever, that it would be funded. Since we have a process, the need to have a large amount of money is alleviated. I would think that it would be nuisance types of things. We, pay for something that's inexpensive to forego the process, but again, letting people know that we had to dip in for X dollars. So you would know better than I do the amount of time it takes to get the special meeting together, to get documentation, and get it supported. Is that days, weeks, months?
No, I mean, to utilize the contingency, the district can just utilize, I would anticipate that the superintendent would report to the school board and probably the budget committee, but definitely the school board to say, looks like we will need to use the contingency, but they use it like any other line item in the budget. So you don't need a public hearing or anything like that. It's at a monthly meeting of the school board, and the superintendent would have a justification for why he needed to use it. The board would more than likely approve it, and it moves on. Using money from the retained fund balance requires a 7-day notice posting of a public hearing in a newspaper to let the community know that there's going to be a public hearing about spending money from the retained fund balance, and at a school board meeting, it's usually during or before a school board meeting, they open up a public hearing and just discuss what the purpose would be, listen to public comment, and then it becomes an action of whether the board wants to approve the use of the funds or not. But there isn't you don't need to, do anything more than the 7 days advance notice and an explanation of your intention of
So
like
it
why
could
you're
be done
using
within
it.
1 or 2 month cycle at the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already approved if
Yeah.
it's done by the warrant at the annual meeting, so it's really spending something that the taxpayers have already approved as far as knowing that it's a possibility.
Well, on the contingency
Right,
side, on
that's-
the retained fund
no,
balance,
yeah, no, I'm
that's
talking
just the
about
one.
contingency, yeah.
But what we would need to do, Brian, to your initial point, which was expanding the percentage for the retained fund balance from the 1%, because we can go to 5% maximum, is we would need to put a warrant article together and have the legislative body vote on increasing that percentage.
To me, it's a matter of transparency. And I'd have a minimal amount of money, since we really don't tap into it except for very unusual circumstances. And then we have a mechanism in place which allows the people in the town to see, hear, speak to it, and make a decision. Although it takes longer, it doesn't sound like it takes an excessive amount of time.
No.
So I'd be leaning towards a little, just to get things done in case something, elevator, whatever, electrical unit, whatever the,
Yeah, like fire
whatever's up.
panels.
Something that requires immediate attention at somewhat of a cost, but not a maximum amount of cost.
Okay, so for the December meeting, I can update this summary. Again, gives everybody something like hard, something tangible to look at. We'll know, excuse me, a little bit more about where additional warrant articles stand, where other districts' articles stand, and can consider various amounts going forward.
That's gonna include fund balances.
That's for the contingency, and we would have to have a discussion on the retained fund balance if we wanted to pursue the article to increase the percentage. Sorry.
The percentage, in theory, doesn't have to be increased to the max, it would be increased by 0.5% or, right?
When we first put the article forward, it was to fund it at 2.5%, and it was a motion from the floor to make it 1%.
Okay.
And that was equal to about 100,000, 180,000, I think
In
you
this
said?
case, it's about 180,000. Previously, it had been about 150, so in that range. Okay. Contingency. Okay, yeah, and I think in December, we'll have a better sense for the potential for the articles on the air conditioning, gosh, I'm choking, and the energy study. We no longer need an article for the athletic trust.
Nope.
Because that's in a revolving fund now. Okay. I lost my agenda, hold on a minute. Lost my agenda. Here it is, okay. SAU budget. So Raul, you had mentioned, does anyone have any other input or question? Oh, before we go on, let's do the CIP.
Oh.
Oh my God.
You want me to hand it out?
Yeah, please. So this is our under 20,000, over 20,000 view, 5-year view of our capital improvement plan. So for 2022, that's our current school year.
Right.
2023 is the year we're planning for, and then we have 24, 5, and 6 for the outer next 3 years. Kelly, can you run us through the highlights?
Oh, the highlights. So just just to note that in FY '22, there are additional items that the school board approved at the end of last year, such as doing a second section of the high school roof. We did the middle school roof. We're working on the main office security. We did the teachers' dirt lot and a lot of other paving at the high school. As far as FY '23, that exactly matches what you see in in the new item spreadsheet. And then 24, 25, and 26 are expansions on a lot of the things that you're seeing in FY '23, as well as things that you're not seeing. Some of these we keep pushing off, like, for instance, ductwork cleaning. We really have to face some music on that someday. And we also are looking at maybe doing an elevator overhaul at the high school. It is getting older. It's not to the point that it needs to be replaced, but it needs some work, some TLC. Another thing we often push off is our water system study and the traffic study, the traffic egress, because as you all know, there's only one way to get out of the high school, and it gets very plugged depending on what the traffic situation is at the time. And that water, or that egress issue could lead to something like $500,000, but that's really a placeholder, because nowadays everything is costing so much more. And the same with the water study, that could end up leading to something larger as well.
Clarification?
Yes.
Is that just for a study?
No, well, 50,000 is for the study.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
that could be much
And
less, or it
then
could
the
be.
rest of it is for an implementation?
Exactly, right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's hard to make
Hard to
that
say.
distinction on this
Yep,
piece of paper,
yep,
but
understood.
good question, very good question.
Kelly, can I just ask a little more information about that, because I just am not familiar with it. But
Well, we have, right now the high school has wells, and it is working well, everything's working well there, but the middle school is dependent on Rocky Pond, which is actually owned by the Hollis School District. And the Hollis School District, in addition to feeding the middle school, is also feeding town property, which apparently they are working to take themselves out of that. Right now, they have access to a grant, I believe that, or is it ESSER money or something, I forget where the source is, but they are looking to take themselves out of that equation, which will help. We've also explored doing a well for the middle school as well. So, and then just the Rocky Pond system in general is getting old, and I think it was originally thought when we put that on there that both districts would contribute towards a study, because they both benefit from the use of the Rocky Pond station. So at some point that's going to get old and need a lot of work. So I think we're trying to head that off. We did have a significant amount of work done like 5 years ago, no more than that, 7 years ago. And so that definitely increased the life, but that was 7 years ago, so.
So a couple quick follow-ups then. So this has nothing to do with water quality testing?
No.
You did an issue with that a couple of years ago, didn't you?
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the quality. It really has to do more with getting the middle school detached from
This
the
is
Rocky Pond
systems.
station, yeah.
And right now, we're paying the Hollis School District for the water service?
No,
No, we're not.
no one's paying, because we can't, we're really not supposed to be a water district. So, it's like, we've never really known what to do with that. So the town isn't paying us anything, or, because we really legally can't take any money, so.
So your thought then is that the town isn't gonna pay anything for a study because they're planning to get off of it,
Exactly,
and we'll share the cost with other school districts?
yeah, that is, when we originally put this on here and we keep pushing it, that was the idea.
What's the total cost of the study then, if our portion's 50,000?
Well, again, no one knows what the total cost is. We haven't really pursued getting an estimate on that, so that's really just a placeholder until we are seriously going to look at it.
Sorry for the questions, just.
No, I appreciate the questions, thank you.
Can I suggest a couple of points on this chart?
Yes,
the footnotes for the
Yes.
1-star, 2-star, and 3-star.
Yep.
Can you add the total number instead of having me go through and count how many have 1-stars or 2-stars or 3-stars?
You mean the dollar figure?
Yes, because
Okay.
I want to understand what's already been paid and what needs to be on a warrant article.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So for example, if the 3-stars, board approved, but maybe that the money hasn't been, you know, as I said, is the money already been, acquired? I mean, is the,
Yes,
The
well,
funds?
those things were all encumbered, yes.
so everything
Now,
has been encumbered?
Yes, but
Well,
these are,
if it says FY '22 or FY '21, it's been encumbered or is in the process of being worked on or paid
Yes.
for.
right,
And
so,
anything with 2-star is anticipated for '23, which is what we're looking at for the budget.
Right,
Yeah.
so I wanna be able to differentiate what's already been encumbered and it's in the past versus what's ahead of us.
well, FY '22, everything has been encumbered, although I will say these are, you know, what we encumbered, they may not be the actuals yet,
Right.
because in some cases, they're not done. in
And
some
then you
cases
might
they-
wanna highlight what's a placeholder versus what's, more real, more,
Well, I would say 24, 25, and 26 are all placeholders.
I mean, in case this becomes a public record, you know, at
Right.
least people can, understand.
Right.
But I would
The-
say probably if you're looking at 24, 25, and 26, I mean, we, you know, the roof sections were pretty, those, I was going to say we pretty much know what those are because we've had a plan for so long, but the changes in the
Yes.
rates have changed so
Right.
dramatically
We
and
know what-
construction costs.
Yeah, we know what the
that-
section is, but we don't
don't
know
know,
the
really.
dollar figure anymore, and that's.
But at least it get, so are these numbers that are in here the previous amounts?
No, these have been adjusted to
They have been
what we
adjusted. Okay, great.
think they
Okay.
could be at the time we do it.
Beautiful, okay.
I
And
mean,
then.
this is a very
oh,
useful table, I mean, I'm just saying.
It's is this updated in, it's not updated in the view that I sent around, it
No,
will be
this is
updated in the
hot
next
off on
view.
the presses, yes.
So this will be included as a tab in the Budgetron file.
Right, right. And the only other thing I guess I would add to what I've already said is just, we're trying to take care of all the paving projects in the next, 5, 6 years, so that, there's a lot of paving stuff in there.
And I think what'll end up happening too, at the end of this year, we'll kind of get back on track. We were having a really nice facilities overview in like the May timeframe. That got kind of put aside for the past couple of years because of
I did do that
COVID.
last spring, though.
Yes, and this spring, we can meet our new facilities maintenance person.
Yes.
He can come and do
Yes.
the overview.
I'm very excited.
So,
for that.
I think that's always a good
Yes.
conversation and a good kind of recalibration
Yes.
of where we are. We just have, maybe I can dig that out and send it to folks. But it is very similar to
Right.
What we're looking at here.
Yeah, it
so.
is similar. It might, this is probably more accurate now than that was,
Mhm.
but.
Because we took we did some of the stuff in '22.
Exactly,
So, yeah,
yes.
the one that we got in the spring is a little bit
Yeah, that's
outdated.
true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Exactly.
Okay. Any questions? Kelly? Okay. Moving on to the SAU budget, I didn't distribute another copy of it because it hasn't changed since last month, but what I did ask, focus everyone's attention is the job description that was included in the board packet for the communication and compliance specialist. Just find my board packet. I thought that was one of the more detailed descriptions that I've seen in a long time. There's definitely a significant number of responsibilities that the person would have. Raul, did you have any questions specifically?
Yeah, I read this 2 or 3 times. The first point that I wanted to make is on item KL, there's a line that says assist with school board process including posting of agendas, meeting notices, and public hearing notices, etc. Why can't we add the budget committee as part of that as well? Or is there any reason why just the school board is highlighted and not the budget committee? other words, if this is gonna be an assistant to help with communications and support based on all those activities, I would think that may be,
I don't know why, I mean, I'm sure that's,
so,
I'm sure it's included in here without being included.
well, but, you know, I'd like to have a more, I found the description to be thorough, but it was mostly overview, wasn't specific enough for my taste.
Wow.
The other question that I had was, I thought this was gonna be a communications officer, not communications and compliance. So I would like to get more feedback from you as to what was meant by compliance and what are the activities. When I read all the lines, there was only one line that talked about an example of compliance. It didn't, and it had to do with emails or something like that.
Well, there's a lot of things that we are required to do by a deadline, and it is extremely overwhelming to keep track of that, any one person or even any three people, so that
So
person.
can you give me some examples of compliance activities?
I would say updating the documentation that supports the CARES ESSER grants. Those require continual updates like, implementation plans in the district, communication plans of how you're communicating, how the funds are being used, how you're getting feedback from stakeholders. Those will require ongoing updates to the state.
So really, responding to public questions is
It's
really a
not
very,
just-
very small,
Oh, no, that's a huge piece. I'd say that's the most important piece of that position.
that's not the impression I got from reading all of that.
Wow.
Because there were like 100 tasks, and responding to the public seemed to be only one of 100 rather than 90% of the total time. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and it's very difficult to not have this position and detail exactly what that person's gonna do, because every day that day is gonna be different for this person. So I think the intent was to give you a sense of all of the things that could be done. There's not any percentages that are necessarily attached to this list, but this is, in my mind, a comprehensive list of all the things that this person could do.
Right.
But what they're gonna end up doing, I would say most of the time will be spent with meeting the needs of our community, whether that's staff, public, taxpayers, students, staff, so.
A lot of this is RTKs too, isn't it?
Yes, a lot of it is driven by right to know, because we are getting a lot more of those.
And I would say across 6 schools, if you look at the level of communication, I think probably, you're monitoring potentially, websites of teachers and, for
Yes.
content and making sure, those levels of communication, fall in line with the policies and procedures of the district. And then if you think about
Exactly.
that and magnify it for not just these 2 schools, but for all 6 schools. So everything is times 3. So if we have 2 schools here, well, there are 2 other districts that the person is doing this for.
Exactly.
So if, any of these times 6, it isn't like you're doing it for just one school.
Exactly,
So this person would be working for the superintendent
yes.
and not just for the co-op.
Correct.
It's a shared, it's an SAU position, and it gets, the cost is included in the SAU budget that gets allocated to the 3 districts.
Okay, because I haven't had kids in school in a while, but I'm aware and a little bit familiar with the website that's been developed, that a lot of these things are done now through the website, automated, and getting information out to the community, information out to students,
Yes,
parents, and so
yes.
on. So I'm trying to think of, is there redundant tasks involved here with
No,
this?
This person would take over the SAU website, because the person doing it now is very overwhelmed doing it with all the other things that she does.
Okay, because I was under the impression that a lot of the things that you mentioned, like overseeing the content, I thought those were applications that do that automatically on the website.
No, I mean, we have a website, but there's nothing, I don't think there's anything automatic
So if a
about
student
it.
decided to download some software on their device that's on
That's, well, when I was talking about like
Individual
websites of
schools, yeah.
teachers and communication, I'm
Good
talking about
link.
like classroom-specific
Mm.
communications and things like
Okay.
that. But if you're wondering about like firewalls and things we have that prevent students from doing
Yes.
it, that's a different like IT
Oh, yeah,
department
that's.
issue.
the
That's
other
something
thing.
completely different.
Okay, because I was thinking that either a lot of these tasks can already be done through the website that's currently in place, or software applications and devices can be put on to
Yeah,
automate the
but
process.
this position has really nothing to
To
do
do
with
with
that.
So
No.
this is a staff position to the superintendent.
Mhm.
So Mike, the key point that I wanted to make, my primary interest is adding the budget committee, just like the school board is included in that one line item officially, because I remember at least once or twice over the years, we were overwhelmed by requests for information at the last minute prior to major meetings, and we had to respond, and then the question was, should we be responding, or maybe should someone else be responding on our behalf?
Well, I think those things, I wouldn't want to take the budget committee's responsibility away from the budget committee. If someone makes a right to know request to the budget committee,
Yeah.
there's this, depending on what it is, it's the budget committee's responsibility to respond. So, and also, depending on what it is, it could be our responsibility to turn it over back to the superintendent.
Right.
So it becomes just a function of whatever, the request
Situationally
is.
dependent, yeah.
or whatever, support
So
we
you don't
need.
think we need a staff assistant, for example,
No.
or some percentage
No.
of
No.
that staff position to be?
No, but I have the full faith that if we were met with a situation that we needed support,
We
this
could get
would
it.
the
The
district would
position would
support
do
it.
it, yeah.
Okay.
I don't need it to be stipulated, but as I would expect, without the position, I would expect support if I needed it. With the position, I would expect
Okay.
support if we needed it.
Absolutely.
So,
All right.
So this has nothing to do with academics or anything, this is a support for the superintendent
Yes,
for 6 schools.
yes.
Right.
mhm.
Because right now, Andy and Gina are doing a lot of this, and it is causing them to be very overworked, and and that overwork is taking them away from the education, the academic pieces.
Kelly, describe what happens with the right to know. For example, like, what are they asked to do? And what does Andy I mean, a lot of this documentation is confidential, so.
Right, well, we just had one this summer in which I think Gina turned over to legal to review a stack of paper that was about this thick, that she and I collected, she mostly, for the entire month of July. So she was taken away from anything educational, academic, for that entire month. And it was very overwhelming, and, we're still actually dealing with it. So you never know what you're gonna get.
But that's the kind of thing that is new for the school district too.
Well, I mean, we've always had right to know, but as long as I've been here, maybe one every 3 years, and now it's 5 a year,
That's what I mean, workload
yeah,
is new.
yeah.
We're getting
And
these on
It's
a
also
regular
about,
basis.
like, efficient use of resources. So,
Exactly.
so while of course the superintendent or assistant superintendent need to oversee or see things, should they be the ones,
Absolutely.
pulling that data?
That's
And as
right.
you said, you're taking them away from curriculum development,
Yes.
oversight of the entire district.
Exactly.
We're paying Gina a lot of money to make photocopies.
Onboarding,
Right.
staff, new
Oh, wow.
staff members,
Right.
making decisions for,
And I was helping her in the middle of trying to do our audit, so,
Right.
that tells you something.
So it's just, we gotta quit playing defense
Right,
and have somebody ready to go when this happens.
exactly.
And in the meantime, do those things that you were asking about, the communications and websites and all that,
Right,
while when she's not working on that
right.
type of stuff.
I mean, the overwhelming reason for this position is to allow Andy and Gina to get back to doing educational things.
And I said she, I meant the person.
Yeah, the
It
person.
doesn't have to be a she.
Right.
Is there someone already in mind, or have people applied
Nope.
yet, or? that
Well,
will-
we have
No,
to.
they can't do,
Right.
it has to get
advertise.
approved through the
So
SAU
there's
budget
a-
in
There you go,
April, no,
Raoul.
in March.
Part-time job for you.
Jumping ahead, Raoul. So I would just encourage everyone to, continue reviewing the SAU budget. I will unfortunately miss the next meeting, which is that Monday?
Monday.
It's Monday.
Mhm.
Oh, So take the weekend, and if there are any questions, please forward them to me or Brian, actually, because Brian is on the committee for Brookline, but obviously would represent our position for the budget committee. And then that budget will go forward with the governing board meeting on the 16th with a public hearing and approval by the governing board. And then we'll get the final allocations that get wrapped into the
Right,
budget,
exactly.
things like that.
Yep.
So what was the date of the next meeting?
The governing board meeting
16th.
is the 16th.
We're the 15th, right?
Right,
And the school board's the 8th.
right. We moved to a Wednesday.
Because of the
Because of,
holidays, everything got
and,
changed.
right, and because of the governing board meeting. Okay. I just want to take a minute, Cindy, before we go to the school board update and talk for just a second about some of the additional information that I shared. I asked Kelly for December to have a revenue estimate ready, which would help guide us toward tax impacts and things like that. One of the major things that's going to drive the tax impacts this year was the change in the formula for adequacy. So I shared with everyone a link to a presentation that was given to Reaching Higher New Hampshire. Mark Manganello is a DRA person who manages the adequacy and the distributions, and gave a very thorough presentation of the change to the SWEPT calculation that the legislature passed to affect the FY23 budget. It is an hour long, as I said, but it is worth the hour of your time because having listened to it, there's just a lot of good information that he shares. If you don't want to do that, you can just read through the slides that he has, which are, again, are chock full of information. Basically what's going to happen with the change to the SWEPT calculation, part of our adequacy is split into two parts, which is included in the cooperative, the distribution of the adequacy estimates for next year for the co-op. You'll see that there are two parts. One is adequacy and one is the retained grant, which comes from the statewide educational property tax. There's a change at the legislature that will reduce the statewide education property tax. What ends up happening is that typically $363 million is collected across the state through the statewide education property tax, and every community gets back dollar for dollar what they put in. It's estimated based on equalization, or the equalized value of the community. It's paid back based on assessed value without utilities. In any event, whatever the community pays in is what the community gets back. And that amount has been $363 million for a very long time. Legislature last year passed an RSA for 1 year that said for FY23, the amount that's going to be collected is $263 million, so $100 million less. So at face value, that concerned some of us who said, oh my, if you are collecting less, that means we still have to cover our budget with less funding. What the law now says is, have no fear, we're going to collect $100 million less, and the state is going to cover that extra $100 million. So it does result in a direct property tax reduction to every community for 1 year only. So that is explained in the presentation. You may ask yourself, where is that extra $100 million going to come from? They talk about it in that presentation, and the $363 million or $263 million goes into something called the Educational Trust Fund. It is about a fund of about $1 billion that's comprised of the statewide education property tax and other business, lottery, tobacco taxes, and things like that. So the state has full confidence and faith that the balance of that educational trust fund will cover this $100 million, and for 1 year only, the statewide education property tax is going to be reduced. There will be, the offset is on the adequacy side, so we'll see the statewide education property tax go down. We should see adequacy rise a little bit. And for the statewide education property tax, but again, is dependent on our enrollment and average daily membership. So there are kind of tweaks along the way. If we see our average daily membership drop, then other parts of the adequacy formula change. Can get into that in December, but I just wanted to share that information because it is new information, it's also temporary information, and my preliminary look at what that means for the co-op. If you just looked at the statewide educational property tax in isolation for the co-op, Brookline would see, you know, again, based on an estimated change to the tax base and things like that, each community would see a reduction of around 30 cents per thousand due just to the statewide education property tax. I am not saying that the tax rate is going down. There are many other factors that contribute to what the tax rate impact is, but there will be savings on that one portion. And so when we get the revenue estimates, combine it with this adequacy and where our budget is, we'll have that tax estimate. But I just wanted to kind of get that information out there. The adequacy estimates were just released on Monday of this week, the 15th. And that's when we kind of all became aware of the fact that the statewide educational property tax, we weren't going to have to make up that $100 million a different way and things like that. So there has been a lot of information to kind of understand in a very short amount of time. The other, I can share another file with you. That's the complete adequacy file. And that'll show you all of the components to adequacy, because you'll see the stabilization grant that Brookline receives. There are some disparity aid calculations. There are some hold harmless effects from the statewide education property tax. There are a lot of components and a lot of puts and takes. Some relief they're giving because to some communities, not really affecting us. With regard to free and reduced lunches, it's a very complex formula to come up with adequacy. And for what you would see by sharing that is you would see a whole number, a complete number for Brookline, a complete number for Hollis, but that represents K to 12. So then we have to go in and look at Matt has it up right now, the summary that has the pieces for co-op districts. And so you take the total less that, and that's the residual that's left for the K to 6 district. But it is, and so the information they provide for the co-op is in a summary fashion and kind of doesn't give you all of that detail to what the amount they give to a student, you know, who is an ESOL student, a special education student, and that's all broken down in a different file. But I wanted you to have that because it all, like I said, just came out, and it gives you an opportunity to look at that presentation and do whatever, you know, additional investigation you'd like to do. So that was the purpose for that. And then I also included some links to just some other DOE documentation and NHRS documentation for like cost per pupil. There are a lot of good reports on the DOE website, enrollment, staffing information. There's a lot of good information there. And on NHRS, I gave you, I think, the historical rates for like the past 30 years and the frequently asked questions. So those are kind of good places to just kind of keep, you know, familiarizing yourself with kind of how those processes work. So hopefully you find that helpful. Please, if you have any questions, please feel free to email or call or whatever. We can kind of go through some of those things. But as I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to tax rate impacts and revenue and whatnot.
Pretty complicated.
Hmm?
Pretty complicated.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you just explained to me how the guy moves the cups.
That's pretty much what it has felt like trying to figure it out.
Still don't know where the ball
Very
is.
accurate.
Not far from it.
Very
So,
accurate.
and again, I can't emphasize enough that in this case, it's really you know, unless something changes with the legislation, it's a one-time thing. It's for 1 year, this is what's happening. So, we'll see.
I couldn't help notice that, you know, we got our tax bill for payment by the end of this month. There was a substantial decrease in the total.
So I did share with everyone the tax rate sheets for the new, the rate setting. Yes,
Yeah.
Raul. So we can look at those as well, and I think Brookline, where's my, here we go. Brookline was, last year I think was at $23.18, and they're at $20.95. And Hollis, oh no, I'm sorry, that was Hollis. Brookline, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong thing. Oh, Brookline, even better for Brookline. Brookline was $27.81 and is now $28.58. Oh, you went up a little bit. Did I just, is that what I, wait, am I looking at the right thing? We're in 21, right? Yes, I'm looking at the right one. So the whole, for the whole community, Brookline is at $28.58, and my last tax view, oh, not that tax view, this tax view. Ooh, Brookline went up a little bit. $27.81 to $28.58. Did you see an increase?
Don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay, and Hollis, it's looking like a slight increase. Hollis was at $23.18 and is now at $22.70. So I can have a little bit of a summary together too for kind of how that broke out for the co-op, because now we have the co-op apportionment, because you can't kind of see that on the tax bill, so we'll have that put together too. So really kind of the drivers of any individual rate changes, like for the co-op or for the K-6 districts, were because of the unreserved fund balances that they all returned. So there might be, you know, some increases on the town and county side. I'm trying to look at it really quickly. It's hard to see. Brookline. 578. Brookline, 523. So, you know, we just need to look at it and kind of see how things broke out. But you at least have the overall breakdowns, and then, as I said, the apportionment is separate, and I'll get you some information on how that breaks up those local education rates. Okay, so that's all of the information that I sent out to everybody. Cindy, if you don't mind talking about any board updates.
We just had our meeting last night because we had to do some shuffle in meeting times. And really for the budget portion, the job description, which you guys had discussed last month, and we already have discussed today. The only other probably item that we had last night of interest to the budget committee is we have had a community member come forward that works at Southern New Hampshire University, and they have asked if we would like to be part of their computer recycling, because they recycle theirs every 3 years, which is a lot shorter than what our recycling is. So they have donated 13 Dell laptops, and the board, of course, approved that. We weren't sure if the dollar amount would go over the need for the board approval as it's the rule is written. So we did approve that last night, and we hope that this is going to be a continuing relationship. That we get these, and our IT people looked at the computers before they decided to accept this offer and said that they're really nice. Really nice.
All right.
So are these computers provided with the hard drives or without hard drives?
I don't know.
Because
I think they have everything.
Everything is.
I think it's everything as is.
They
It's just,
somehow they're wiped out of data and then they're donated.
yeah, because they recycle theirs.
And then the IT staff updates them with the software
Yes.
and the apps.
Everything goes through IT before it goes out to either teachers or students or wherever they're going to be used.
Is there a charge per computer, or is there an annual fee, or how does that work?
No, they're just donating them to
Donating.
us.
Free?
Yeah.
I like free.
They probably, like my son's in college right now, and this college has started providing laptops to the students, but they recycle his twice. So he, out of the 4 years, he gets them, you know, two new computers basically, and then the last one he gets to keep with him. And I think what happened versus what I saw with my first son was he could never get anything to work at the university, because it didn't have all the software, it didn't have the printers, it didn't have, so I think that a lot of the smaller colleges have decided that it's less effort, probably from their IT side of it, to just supply it with, and it already has all the printers and everything on campus that needs to be hooked up to it. So since this is Southern New Hampshire, they may be doing something similar, and so they're turning theirs around every 3 years, so. We didn't, that was it, as far as budget. It was kind of a short meeting, because it was just an odd week for everybody to try to have a meeting, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I will just mention, I know Darlene sent out the agenda. For those of you that have any interest in what's going on with the SAU lease for the building, there is some documents in there. Liz went through it with us last night, kind of briefly, but it is in the agenda.
Right, so it was about like a market analysis of the rates and the property itself.
Right.
Because I think the Hollis School District is trying to just make a determination of, well, actually, the governing board is making a determination about like how to set up the lease structure and things like that for the kind of ongoing leasing of the 4 Lane and
Right.
kind of how to
And
proceed and make sure that the, rates are aligned and things like that.
My understanding from Liz was the market analysis showed that we're right in the ballpark of what the rent really should be
For the property
for
as
the
is.
property as is, yeah.
Okay, the other documentation that was in the board packet was a letter from our recording secretary about an increase in her pay rate, and I cannot tell you how much I would support paying her almost whatever she needs. So she does an absolutely fantastic
I
job.
second that.
I can't tell you how, but she's like, oh, she'll send me an email, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll take care of that right now, Dawn, thank you for letting me know. So I really do appreciate the professionalism and the amount of detail and attention she pays to, which is not just this committee, but the other boards she supports as well. She's absolutely fantastic. So
Yes.
I don't know where her rate is and what it's in the SAU budget, and so hopefully it's been adjusted accordingly, because I would support whatever increase you plan on giving
She's
her.
also
So
very responsive.
she is,
Yeah,
extremely
both,
so.
the SAU governing board voted on an increase for her, and so did the
Okay.
co-op board last
I
night.
think it's been through all of the boards by now.
Yeah,
so,
Okay,
because she hadn't had any increase since 2016,
Yeah, that's just not right.
so.
Okay, great. Okay, I think that covers our agenda. Our next meeting is on the 15th. And I'll look to our process observer if there are no other issues or questions at this time.
Great meeting, very efficient, very productive, very effective. We're all happy.
Okay. And with that,
We're ahead of schedule.
Yes.
I will take a motion to adjourn at 7:58 PM.
So
from
moved.
Brian, seconded by
I'll say.
Tom Whalen. All those in favor?
Aye.
The unanimous vote. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you.
Likewise, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, darling. Thank you, Kelly.